Yes, American Friends Service Committee. So we got to hear about that. We appreciate you being here. We appreciate you standing with my sister. Because you guys do know that when you get together in a space that's all about love, then it's fluid. We can roll, we can do whatever it takes, but we're never going to stop pushing this legislation, not until it gets done, and not until loved ones who should have been home decades ago make it home. Amen. Amen. Come on, Pete.
Thank you so much, Representative. Thanks for calling me up here early too, Lawanda. And apologies that I was late showing up. Good morning, everybody. How are we doing out there? Okay, this is a great turnout. We got the bounce house fully active over there, and it's a good time. And it's also a time for some optimism here in Michigan with our current government. And hopefully we can dig down deep and summon up the support and the push that we need to really remedy some wrongs that we've been living with here in Michigan. So my name's Pete Martel. I'm the Associate Director at the American Friends Service Committee in Ypsilanti, Michigan. Our office started doing prison work here in Michigan back in 1969. And for a long time, Mark Maurer ran our project doing a racial disparity court watching sentencing analysis. That was throughout the 70s into the early 80s, at which point he opened up a new nonprofit down in DC called the Sentencing Project. Our current director is Natalie Holbrook. She's been at AFSC for about 20 years now. I met Natalie while I was incarcerated. I spent 14 years here in prison from 1994 until 2008. When I first got locked up, I tried to escape, and I spent 10 years in solitary confinement for that escape. And that's how I met Natalie Holbrook, because they were the one, that was like the one office that you would hear back from if you were writing to about problems in prison. So I got out in 2008, and I've been working, and I've been in school, and I've been clearly eating plenty since I've been out. And I often think about all of those friends that I've left behind, those the old heads who got me on the right track. They were lifers, and they were just schooling me about how to do time and how to do time productively. And a lot of them are still in there, and some have passed away, and we've lost them. So I grew up, I was born and raised here in Michigan, and I've always thought of Michigan as a semi-progressive state, or at least somewhere in the middle. I never thought of Michigan as Arizona or Mississippi or Alabama. And as I've been working on problems in prisons and doing analysis about sentencing and punishment, I've come to learn some surprising things specifically about Michigan. So how many people feel like Michigan is somewhere in the middle, or maybe even progressive leaning in the grand scheme of things? Show of hands. Somewhat. How many people think that Michigan probably is on the better side of things as far as, especially sentencing length goes? No. Do people think of Michigan is the worst, most punitive state? Wow, look at this crowd here. Yes, we're the absolute worst. And the way that those numbers have changed over time. At one point, we had a high of 51,000 people in Michigan's prisons. That was way back in 2007. In 2007, they hit such a peak, and it was so expensive. And looking forward, they were thinking, this is going to cost us so much money. There's better ways that we can spend this money. And they started letting people out. For Pete's sake, they let me out even in 2008. So scratch your head about that. But since 51,000 back in 2007, we've depopulated the Michigan prison population quite a bit. We're all the way down to 33,000 now. So it's a significant decline. There's fewer people in prison now than there were in 2007. And in fact, we're at the lowest level since about 1990. That is good, yes. But the big problem is the 33,000 people who are left. When we look at the people who are serving these ridiculously long, harmful, just punitive sentences, it's half of the prison population now. Back in 1990, it was 20% of the population. So we've got these numbers, and we've also got people who were coming in at the front end of this really, really harsh sentencing regime. And people who come into prison are pretty typically, on average, pretty young. Late teens, early 20s. It's a little bit older for women coming to prison because it's kind of a different situation there. But when we're looking at people who are coming in late teens and early 20s, 80s, the people who are stuck in prison, they're now in their 60s and 70s. And if we don't do something different here in Michigan, those people who are serving the long sentences are going to begin dying at higher and higher rates. And it's unlike anything that we've seen in the past, because we have to deal with this ramp up of all of these people going in on really, really long sentences. The parole board has done quite a bit to get people out and lead to that reduction that we've got right now, but they don't have any say about how long somebody's sentenced for or how long somebody has to serve before they're eligible for parole. So we like to think of it in terms of people who have to serve at least 15 years or more, or they're serving life sentences, and that's half of our prison population now. And because those people are getting so old, over the past 15 years or so, they've driven the average age up by 10 years. That pull that whole average up by 10 years. And we now have people who are in their 70s and even 80s in prison because of these long sentences. We have people who have served almost 60 years in prison. So this is not at all a matter of public safety. Nobody's worried about somebody getting out in their 60s or 70s or 80s who have spent all of this time in prison for something they did in their teens or 20s. This is not about public safety. This is about eternal, endless punishment that we're going to do. We're just going to keep somebody in a prison cell, away from their family, away from their friends, away from society, where they can prove themselves. And we're just going to keep them in prison simply for the sake of punishment. And that's not the sort of society I want. I hope it's not the sort of society that anybody here wants. But the only way that we're going to fix that, because of Michigan's sentencing scheme and because of Michigan's legal system, the only way that we're going to fix that and get those people out who have served so long is through second look legislation. So if second look legislation passes this year, when second look passes, we're still probably going to have a problem with the judges that are on the benches that are doing the considerations, right? Because we have this custom and culture in Michigan of really, really harsh punishment. But once the legislature and the governor enact this, at least then we can take local action about the judges who aren't getting in line with the idea of giving people second chances, about the possibility that people are redeemable and the people don't need to be punished for the rest of their lives for whatever it was that they did. So we can take that to them locally one at a time, and we can get new judges on the benches if we need to. But we really, really need second look legislation to give some sort of discretion to people who will be able to reduce sentences and just make them eligible for parole. That's all I have this morning. Thank you so much.